Hi, yes, Lindsay and Ann. I did donate blood today, and honestly, it feels amazing to know that just my donation is going to help 3 Central Texans in our area. Now, 25 News partnered with Carter Blood Care last year for a goal of 25 pints, and while that may have a nice ring to it, we are looking to beat that goal this year.
That's when the officer made contact with Dean through his passenger side. DeCruz ordered Dean to turn off the car and hand over the keys. The officer used his left hand to reach for the keys, all the while his right hand was on his handgun. That gun was pointed right at Dean, with DeCruz's finger on the trigger. Now, as the officer pulled back with his left hand, his right hand also went back, causing the gun to go off. Dean was shot in the head. Now, after the shot, DeCruz pulled Dean out through the passenger side. He and other responding officers performed medical assistance until medics arrived, but it was too late. Michael Lorenzo Dean was pronounced dead at the scene.
Todd and Naya, there's a growing movement pushing for police departments to ban chokeholds and strangleholds. But what makes that request so complicated is just how an officer places pressure on a person's neck. Just that switch in pressure can change the move from prohibited to accepted. Now, we do want to warn you that some viewers may find the following video disturbing.
I can't breathe. It's not the first time those words have ignited a movement. Organizations like the NAACP and government leaders are now calling for the prohibition of chokeholds and strangleholds by officers to prevent those words from being uttered again.
It's a death hold. When you cut off somebody's breathing, it's a death hold. You're trying to kill them.
Benny Walsh, president of the Temple branch of the NAACP, believes it doesn't take much for the police restraint to turn deadly.
When your adrenaline is flowing, in arrest or whatever it may be, you don't know how much strength that you may be inflicting on somebody's throat.
Sergeant Ryan Bona of the Bryan Police Department says it's against policy to use a chokehold.
We don't do anything that's a chokehold or stranglehold related. That has to deal with airway and restricting the airway in the front, and we don't have anything in our policy that allows that unless we're at deadly force.
Bryan PD is not the only Central Texas Police Department to ban such techniques. Waco PD says chokeholds have been prohibited by the department for more than 2 decades, while Temple PD says the tactics used in George Floyd's arrest are not taught to their officers. However, there is a move taught by some departments across the country that can be confused as a chokehold.
Remember to tap out. Open your eyes. Tap out.
It's called a lateral vascular neck restraint. Instead of placing force on the front of a person's neck, it constricts blood flow along the sides.
Relax. She's fighting it. She's fighting it.
You're not doing anything in the throat area that would damage or interfere with normal breathing flow. You're staying off the windpipe and all those things.
The restriction can cause a person to pass out.
Relax, relax, easy.
Mike Gentry with the Texas Police Chiefs Association says the technique is not common.
Even lateral vascular neck restraint, by policy, my experience is fairly rare that it's authorized or addressed. I haven't seen one in some time.
The move was a part of Bryan PD's use of force options. However, the department has recently removed the hold following a policy review.
Every time that we have a use of force and we get that use of force reporting form and we look at it, we go back and we review policy. And if we see things that need to be changed, then we try to determine what's the best way to change them, what's the most appropriate action to take.
Now, certain police documents like use of force policies are available to the public. In order to look at those documents, all you have to do is send a public information request to your city that can usually be done through the city's website. Live in Waco, Sydney Isenberg, 25 News. Like you said, Todd, vaccines are a key part in Abbott's reopening plan. Today, DSHS announced 1 million first doses are headed to the Lone Star State next week. Roughly 245,000 of those doses are the new Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccine. Now, the state is seeing a drop whenever it comes to case counts and hospitalizations compared to our July record highs, which is great news. However, we aren't out of the woods just yet. Now, while there is limited attendance at the game itself, some dedicated football fans are making that trip out to Tampa. So let's go ahead and start at the home of this year's big game. Now, in Florida, specifically in Hillsborough, which is where Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes are going to be duking it out in Raymond James Stadium. State officials there have reported almost 103,000 total cases for Hillsborough County. Now, if we take a look at their incidence rate, which is going to be per population, and that gives us a more even look, that is going to be about 8,375 cases per 100,000 people. But since most of us are staying put for the game, let's travel to the home of the greatest football team in the league and future big game champions, and hopefully the not so distant future. So let's go ahead and switch it over to Texas. Now, since the beginning of the pandemic, Texas has seen roughly 2.13 million COVID-19 cases. Again, that is based on state numbers. There it is. Now, if we were to look at the heat map right now, what it's saying is most of those cases are going to be found in those metropolitan areas, so Dallas, Austin, and Houston. But what we want to look at is the incidence rate. That's going to be on per population. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And with that, we're going to see that there is actually faster spread along the border and into the panhandle. Now, taking a closer look here in central Texas, we're going to be saying based on the total count, again, those higher number of cases are going to be seen in the places that have the most population. So McLennan County, Bell County, and Brazos County would see those higher number of cases. But if we switch it back to the per population, that's what we're going to see where it's spreading, because again, it puts that population on an even playing field population-wise. Yes, Todd, the hashtag I am Vanessa Guillen is filled with thousands of posts from soldiers and sailors to airmen and Marines alike. They are sharing their stories of their time in the service. Now, the one common thread between them is sexual assault and harassment. Vanessa Guillen dreamed of being in the military since she was 10 years old. The Houston native wanted better opportunities and to help her parents, but her dream quickly became a nightmare.
She signed that contract with the Army to protect and serve the country. Yet look how they treated her, like if it was she was nothing.
In the days before her disappearance, the 20-year-old told friends, family, and even fellow soldiers on post that she was being harassed by her superior.
She was taking a shower, she was in the locker room. He walked in and sat there, and she was very creeped out, as one would be.
Roughly 25% of female active duty members are sexually harassed each year, according to Protect Our Defenders, a human rights organization that fights for survivors of military sexual assault and harassment. In the service academies, that number jumps to 50%. Most of the time, the incident goes unreported.
For most women who report, it's a career-ending decision. The DOD's own numbers show that 1/3 of the women who report a sexual assault are out of the military within a year.
The Guillen family started the hashtag I am Vanessa Guillen, encouraging fellow military members to share their stories. The hashtag has been used hundreds of times to share disturbing acts against women in the armed forces.
I was raped in my sleep when the door was locked not even 2 months after arriving to my first command, and I was terrified to say anything because I didn't think anyone would believe me.
I served active duty as a jet mechanic. The men who sexually assaulted me are still serving in uniform today.
I was sleeping. Drunk Marines kicked in my barracks door and raped me. I finally locked myself in the bathroom and they yelled, "No one will believe you. You are a new female. We will get away with this."
Colonel Christensen says Vanessa's story, however tragic, is making a difference.
Well, the military has escaped its Me Too movement a moment, and I think this is potentially finally that Me Too moment.
The Guillen family is now pushing for a bill in Vanessa's honor that would create a third party where military members can report sexual assault and harassment. Right now, criminal investigations are conducted inside the military.
Protect Our Defender says out of the 20,000 sexual assaults that occur each year, only 130 end in conviction. Live in Waco, Sydney Isenberg, 25 News. Good evening, I'm Sydney Isenberg. Texas is set to receive more than 400,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines next week. More than 3,000 are headed to McLennan County and 3,900 are headed to Bell County. Now, the federal government will also be sending vaccine shipments directly to pharmacies to help more people get vaccinated. First National Bank and the Killeen Senior Advisory Board are teaming up to help out one of the area's most vulnerable populations. Brand new blankets, socks, and even food boxes are being collected for senior citizens. Some elderly citizens may be on a fixed income and aren't always able to afford the basic necessities.
Probably maybe one of our more vulnerable population. Again, just with their health, limited income. So being able for them to say that they live in a community that cares about them is really important.
Now, to find out how you can lend a helping hand, visit cleantx.gov or call the Senior Center. The NCAA announcing today that San Antonio will host the entire women's basketball tournament. The move was made to help mitigate the risks of COVID-19. The tournament will feature 64 teams and runs from March 21st through April 4th. The NCAA says they will work closely with the health department there to determine safety protocols. No word yet on whether fans will be able to attend.
We all remember where we were. That moment it began to sink in. COVID-19 was no longer a joke. Now, it was a threat to our lives and livelihoods. Life seemed to switch overnight. Homes changed from a place of peace to an office space that your newfound coworkers happen to live in.
As you can tell, my office has been turned into a classroom.
With that shift came stress, and lots of it.
He's so used to daddy is home, daddy is mine. So that was a really interesting boundary.
I feel like you're accessible so much more, but at the same time, you're not showing like the best you because you're not in that headspace that you would be when you're at work.
On top of that, our old coping mechanisms seemingly disappeared.
When the stress gets to you, I had that 20-minute commute home to detox it out. Whereas now if I'm stressed about something, I could turn around and run right into one of my kids.
But as we do, we persevered, we adapted, and we overcame.
So I set a time that I would work until maybe 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and I would shut my computer, and that was it. No emails, no more work. I would shut the door to the office, and I would go, help with dinner and, help with homework or whatever needed to be done, or sit down and just kind of, chat or watch TV with my kids. And then also making sure that that boundary was open on the weekends.
As we come out of this pandemic and adjust to our new normal, what damage will we bring with us? If you ask the internet, it's COVID PTSD. The Mayo Clinic defines post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, as a mental health condition that's triggered by a terrifying event. Symptoms could include flashbacks, nightmares, and severe anxiety.
PTSD is about more than just a trauma. It's about whenever we struggle to integrate that trauma in meaningful ways into the story of our life, it causes chronic stress. And it's that chronic stress associated with PTSD that really causes the difficulties in people's lives.
Will we have a form of COVID PTSD? For a majority of us, that answer is no.
For the majority of people, again, it wasn't an event. It's this extended period of time that's a collection of events. And so we probably wouldn't clinically define it as PTSD for most people. Going into the pandemic, it felt abrupt, but it really wasn't. It was staged, kind of what we experienced now looking back on it. And I think coming out of it is going to be staged as well, which will be to our benefit, allow us time to kind of adjust and adapt and figure out, what we want our new reality to be.
As we find our way back, experts say it's important to find a way to ease that pandemic stress.
Don't stress about how you de-stress. If you have a friend that, I always go and I light some candles and take a bath and that works for me. And you think, I can't do that. Whenever I light candles, I'm worried the house is going to burn down. And they get stressed about the thing that's supposed to make them unstressed. And so whatever works for you is the best answer.
While we may be nearing the edge of the woods, we are not leaving this unprecedented time empty-handed.
I think what I anticipate for us is a hyper awareness of germs and cleanliness, which is going to be a great thing. Just like in many ways it was for the Depression. Having people learn to be more mindful of their money probably was a good thing for our economic health as a country. And for us, the generations experienced the pandemic, being more mindful of hand washing, and if you're not feeling well, not going into work sick,
At minimum, most can agree the pandemic has brought on one thing: a changed perspective.
I mean, there are a lot of bad things that happen with this pandemic, but there are also a lot of good things that I now appreciate.
I'm going to appreciate people more. I'm going to appreciate hugs more. Being able to just shake somebody's hand. I've always been one of those that loves a firm shake, a handshake. And once we're able to do that again, it's going to be like, oh my God, yay!
the resiliency of taking the family through it, of finding a way to get ourselves through it, of dealing with the fear, the anxiety, and just made our marriage a lot stronger even than it already was. We like finish each other's sentences now, or we finish each other's ideas. We're like, we got to do this. We got to be attentive to that. Yeah.
Ideas and actions that will affect us for better or worse as we move into post-pandemic life.
No matter what is out there, you have to be able to live your life. We can't stop everything.
For 25 News, I'm Sydney Isenberg.